this is Dave Douglas, and that piece you're listening to is called Mozambique. It's by the trumpeter and composer Ted Daniel from his 1974 album Tapestry. I will be talking to Ted Daniel today for the podcast. It's A Noise from the Deep, the Greenleaf Music Podcast, and Ted is a New York area resident. He's originally from slightly upstate of the city, grew up with Sonny Chirac, the guitarist, and after stints away from New York, including Vietnam, he came to the city in the late 60s and began working with people like Archie Shepp and Dewey Redman and Andrew Cyrille and Sam Rivers, Billy Bang, Henry Threadgill more recently. So Ted has a lot of music of his own and albums of his own that he's made, and some of which I was not aware of. So we had a great conversation about music and about all of the different projects he's been involved in. This podcast comes to you through Greenleaf Music, greenleafmusic.com. You can email me directly, podcast@greenleafmusic.com, and make requests or suggestions. And please, as always, go to iTunes if you can and leave a review or a rating. It helps people find all the information on these podcasts, which are basically conversations with musicians who I admire and who I think always have something interesting and important to say. One thing about this interview is that there's a coda at the end. We talk a lot about Ted's recent album, which is an examination of King Oliver and his music. But then he, as I was packing up, mentioned a record he made in 1969 with Sonny Chirac, produced by Herbie Mann, called Brute Force. And I quickly plugged everything back in, and Ted talks a little bit about that album. If you haven't heard it, it's kind of amazing. So we play a little excerpt at the end of the podcast, so you can check it out. And that's it. Thank you for joining us, and I hope you enjoy this episode with the great trumpeter and composer Ted Daniel. Thanks. Yeah, Ted Daniel, thanks for making the time.
My pleasure.
It's great to see you always. Yeah, you've been a big supporter of the Trumpet Festival over the years, and for which I'm very grateful.
Well, I was glad to be a part of it, man. I really was, you know.
Well, it's been special for us.
It's a worthy cause, for sure, as a fellow trumpeter.
Yeah. We were just talking about the chops, weren't we? Yeah. You know, maybe we'll get into that later. You have a new record out, and I want to talk about that in a bit, but I thought just to sort of get into it, where the music is coming from, there's this track that I just love from your record Tapestry from 1974 that we opened the show with, called Mozambique.
Okay, yeah.
And it's just gorgeous, and it's a little hard to tell what's going on there.
Well, you know, the idea was to have a melody floating over top of a lot of energy underneath, mm-hmm. you know, and free feeling of in terms of rhythm, mm-hmm. and so that was what was happening. But I think with the piano playing through the Leslie, that gave it a sort of another worldly sort of sound. It was a very large sound, and then with Jerome playing the way he was playing. You know, it's like a collective energy type of flow. You know, just trying to play it freely, but strong. You know.
Yeah.
You know, yeah. And I tried to create that kind of a feeling of freeness, but still coming at you pretty strong, you know.
And for such an improvised piece, was there sheet music that you gave them?
I had written out a line, you
Yeah.
know, with the chords.
So they
but-
did have something they were
yeah.
looking at.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh yeah, there was a form there, you know. I think I've played it in different settings where it was
Oh,
it's more less free, put it that way, you know. But there was definitely a form there and definitely music. Yeah,
Great.
they knew it. They knew what the music was, so they covered
Well, it was your brother too, right?
Yeah.
On that.
Yeah.
So you guys must have grown up with some sort of musical understanding.
Yeah, we like to disagree a lot.
Well,
No, but he was, you know, he and Sonny grew up together. He and Sonny Chirac, they're older than me, and so they grew up and they were doo-woppers. They had a singing group and all of that and recorded.
Wow.
So Sonny had that in his background also, you know. So yeah, but yeah, we played together a long time. We put that band, that Brute Force, together, and actually Sonny guest on that one.
Really?
On the album that we did for Embryo, Heavy Man
great.
produced. Yeah. So you know, all of us we're connected
yeah.
from childhood.
Beautiful. Who's on the record playing what instruments?
Okay, Tapestry.
1974, right? Do I have-
Yes, 1974. That was a live gig at Ornette Coleman's place. He had an artist studio. And Noah Howard, who was living in Paris at the time, had moved to Paris, had come back and wanted to do a concert. So, and he got with me, and we decided to do each group, his group and my group, would play a set. And that's how the recording, that's how it became a recording. It was a concert.
Where was Ornette's studio at that time? Was it in the Greenwich Village?
Yeah, it was maybe in the Soho area,
Oh, okay.
down further, you know. Yeah, and so yeah, that was 40-something years ago. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting to me. Well, first of all, who else is on it?
Okay, my brother Richard Daniel,
Right.
and
he's playing
electric piano.
Yeah.
With a
Sounds like maybe an organ or synthesizer.
Yeah, he has the organ speaker, the Leslie speaker, hooked up to the Rhodes, Fender Rhodes,
Okay.
and wah-wah pedal and that sort of thing. And Tim Ingalls on electric bass, fretless bass. Jerome Cooper on drums.
Wow.
And Khan Jamal on vibes.
Right.
Now, my brother and Tim are people who were in the band that I formed when I went out to Ohio in '68, when I went out to Central State. And we formed a band called Brute Force. So they had moved to New York around that time. They were in New York. So I hooked back up with them and did that sort of electric
No,
band.
but Ohio, that's where you were originally from.
No, I'm originally from Ossining.
Really?
Yes.
New York,
Ossining, New York, yes.
home of Sing Sing.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what they mean when they say up the river.
Yeah, you go up the river, buddy. So I was born and raised there. Yeah, me and Sonny Chirac and Richard Pierce, a bunch of cats. Yeah, we all grew up there.
And you grew up playing with Sonny, didn't you?
Yeah,
little bit.
what happened was Sonny didn't start playing until his late teens. And I had started as a kid in the school system on trumpet. But when in my teenage years I got interested in jazz and Sonny did also. So we started out trying to play jazz in the early 60s, late 50s, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So back to this recording then, you had been in Ohio.
Yeah, I had been in Ohio prior to that recording. I went out to Ohio after I got out of the Army in '68.
Okay.
And I went out
You
to
were in
Central State.
Vietnam,
Yes,
as were so many musicians.
yes, I was there. Anyway, and that was so when I got out, I went out to Central State to study and get myself back together. I really knew I wasn't ready to just jump back into New York, so I went out there for a year and put that band together, and that's how that happened. Yeah.
Wow.
When I came back to New York in '69,
Uh-huh.
in June of '69.
Right, and started playing with all kinds of people, right?
That July, I went to Newport with Sonny Murray.
Wow.
With Sonny Murray and Alan Silver and Norris Jones, alias Cyrone, and Dave Burrell, and Carlos Ward, and Luke Men Latif on tenor. Yeah, that was quite a band.
Wow. So this record, Tapestry, it wasn't exactly your first record as a leader then, because you'd been back in New York for 5 years by that time.
Yeah, exactly. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think about it. My first record was the sextet. There's like a double trio with Otis Harris on alto, Richard Pierce and Hakeem Jami on bass, Warren Benbow and a kid named Kenny Hughes on drums. So, and that was done at Columbia University, the chapel. I forgot the name of the chapel as we speak. But anyway, it was live, another live recording. And that was the first thing I put out, yeah.
Wow.
That was I recorded it in '70 and I put it out in '72.
I don't believe I've heard that. I'm gonna have to get my hands on that.
The very
Maybe
first
we'll
one?
play a little excerpt. If I can find it, you're gonna hear it.
Okay.
Dear listener.
Okay.
But wow, that's so Tapestry. I mean, it just seems like there's so much going on there for you musically. And the connection to Ornette Coleman, I didn't know, but I know that he was an important figure for everybody on the scene.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, the first record I spoke to has a dedication to him, a tune called O.C.
O.C.
Yeah.
So maybe I do have that, because I know that tune.
Well, I did it again with Duology in
Oh, okay,
2006 or something like that, yeah.
All right.
But yeah, he was definitely an influence on my thinking and playing, for sure.
And you were living in the city, and it seems like just such a rich atmosphere of creative musicians and
Oh boy,
diverse and
yeah,
lots of open space to do
yeah.
new things.
There was a lot going on. A lot of guys there. Even Albert Ayler was still around at that time when I first moved back there, and I'd see him on the corner and talk to him. Or he would just talk, and just a lot of people on the Lower East Side then. Sun Ra's band was on 3rd Street, across from Dave Burrell's apartment at that point, back in the late 60s. It was just Giuseppe Logan was in town. I had met Giuseppe, must have been around '62 in Boston, when I briefly went to Berkeley for a semester.
Oh, really?
And I stayed in Boston for about a year, but because it was a rich environment for young guys trying to play. But Giuseppe, he was a very different cat up there. He was going to New England School of Music, and he wore a suit and tie and everything. Then I see him 5 years later in New York City, and he's a different kind of cat altogether. But a beautiful guy, though, yeah. But all kinds of guys were out on the scene then and playing, and there was a lot of places to play, yeah, for sure.
Wow, you went to Berkeley for one semester?
Yeah.
Can I ask you why it seems like it didn't take?
It didn't take. No, it didn't take. Berkeley was a good school, a lot of good musicians there.
Well, yeah, in '62.
Yeah, it was a heavy.
It's right near the beginning, isn't it?
Yeah. So anyway, I had really never had private lessons, and I knew that I needed them, and so when I got to Berkeley, it didn't work out with the instructor there for some reason. I mean, in hindsight, I can kind of understand what happened in that he wanted to start me from the very beginning. I don't think I was opposed to that. So the very beginning was to buzz the mouthpiece.
Yeah.
But what would happen was I would go to the lesson and he would say, okay, we'll buzz your mouthpiece. And he'd go sit down and do paperwork. And there was no relation. So what
You
know?
don't happen to remember the teacher's name?
Yeah, I know who it was.
Okay.
He's probably passed now. I mean, he was a good trumpet player, but he didn't relate to me. You know.
Wow.
You know. So anyway.
Okay, so we're not going to say names then.
Ray Katwika.
Okay.
Yeah. He was. That's who the trumpet teacher was. And I don't. You know. And later on, I understood about buzzing the mouthpiece. I understood that,
Yeah.
But that had not. What didn't happen was the relationship of why you're buzzing the mouthpiece and how to.
And what it's going to lead to.
Exactly. I never got any of that, so I just felt like he didn't care.
And that was enough to make you just want to get out of there. You came back to New York, I guess.
No. I knew the environment was cool.
Oh,
so I
you
stayed in Boston. And hung out with the cats in school and learned to play a little bit. Even had a chance to sit in with Roland Kirk.
Wow.
You know.
Wow.
Yeah. So I mean, no, I stayed there because I knew the environment was rich and that's where I could learn. And so I stayed, and then I went out to, in '63, the summer of '63, I went out to Southern Illinois University. Yeah.
Okay.
And that's where I was 20 years old. That's when I got my first real lessons in trumpet. You know,
From who?
Philip Olson, Dr. Philip Olson.
And it wasn't necessarily jazz trumpet. It was
No, it was just learn how to play the trumpet. And then he passed me over to his graduate student, Fred Berry.
Okay.
Now, Fred Berry was from Chicago, but he was a graduate student then. And I think he had his master's.
I've met Fred Berry.
Yeah, he's out in California. He was teaching out there many years. But and I didn't know that he at the time I didn't know that he was connected with the AACM or with the Chicago guys, Mulhall, Richard Abrams. He knew them guys and all that.
Wow.
So anyway,
That's at the beginning of their.
Yeah, it was at the beginning of their
too.
stuff. Exactly. And he was down at Southern Illinois teaching. So anyway, so I stayed out there 2 years, then came to New York in '65. Came back to New York in '65, and that's when I hooked back up with Dave Burrell and those guys who I had went to Berkeley with on the Lower East Side, and just started my music. And then shortly after that, I got drafted. In '66, in April of '66, I got drafted, and then I went, and I didn't get back to New York till '69.
Wow.
And I stayed there to '89.
Did you play out there when you were in the Army?
Yeah. Did I play in the Army?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was in the Army band. It was a field band.
Wow.
And so we were out in the boonies, and you took your rifle and you go and you play Tijuana Taxi in the jungle in the little villages and stuff, and they're having a firefight down one end, and you're playing. It was crazy, And then you run, jump back on the Chinook. They take you out of the rice paddy and back to the home base, and fill some more sandbags
And you did this for 2 years.
A year, a full year, and then I came back and did duty here in the States. I did 2 years, so I got out in April of '68. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was an experience. It was definitely an experience.
I'll bet. Yeah. A lot of musicians did go.
Yeah.
Not in my circle, but
right. And
earlier.
Many of them didn't serve in the band. Didn't get a chance to play in a band. Now the field band was really not. I mean, that wasn't their priority for the Army at that time. But if you were in say if you were stationed in Saigon and playing in one of the bands there, that's all you did. You just played ceremonies and whatever, but that's all you did. You didn't take guard duty and all that stuff,
Right. So that was like a more maybe considered a better posting.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt.
Than to be flying on a helicopter and playing close to the action.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I want to get back to the music in a second, but all of this conversation, I mean, I'm really curious about your brother too, but I don't want to, there's so many tangents I could get.
I got a lot of stuff.
But I guess my question I mean, what I'm thinking about as I'm hearing you say all this about studying and different teachers and moving around and being in the Army and being exposed to so many movements and creative spirits. So, I mean, the goal to play the trumpet, we all know, like there's the technical aspect, but then there's also the creative, the imagination, the sound itself. You must have had some sense of where this was leading you at that early time, or was it just a curiosity to want to play the horn?
Well, you know, I had influences, you know. Early on, there was the... well, I first heard, the first record I heard of real modern jazz was Clifford Brown, Study in Brown. And, you know, I just seen the picture. I was about 13, and I seen the picture of a guy. And I said, whoa, let me hear what that is. Because I didn't know what it was. And I put it on. I said, that's what I want to do. So I knew. Yeah. You know?
You had the sound in your ear.
Yeah, you know, I knew. So then I heard Lee Morgan, and, you know, as I got involved in it, and then there was Booker Little. Then that was a big change. That was a big change because Booker Little Out Front, that album, really. And then...
that's same with me. That was a big pivotal record for me, and I've talked to so many other trumpet players like Kenny Wheeler and lots of people that talk about that album specifically.
Oh man, I said, okay, well then let me look at this then. And around that time, of course, Ornette was on the scene and the music was changing and so forth and so on. So, and then Bill Dixon.
Right.
When I heard Bill Dixon, I said, oh, you can just open this thing all the way up. You know, so all those influences, which are what informs my playing to today, you know, and it was always important to me personally to develop a sound of my own. That was important, you know, to be able to sound like yourself. I know that one of the ways to learn how to play jazz is to copy. I understand that, and I get that. But I know that when you spend time doing that, you're also giving up yourself because you're learning that situation, and then you're going to have to unlearn that in order to find you. So I was very careful not to get too far into all those guys in terms of copying their stuff. In terms of copying their stuff. So that I could come up with whatever it was in me.
Yeah.
You know, and that's been a struggle and a fight all the way, as you well know.
But to know that from the beginning is wisdom.
Helpful. Yeah.
Well, it's having an insight. And also, I think, you know, maybe what you're talking about is being able to hear Booker Little, for example, and recognize that he has something of his own.
Yeah.
That belongs to him.
Yeah.
And that saying, I want to do that doesn't mean doing exactly that. It means emulating the spirit of somebody with a creative vision.
Exactly. It means letting your stuff come out like that. Get yourself to come out and project like that. That's
absolutely,
you know, because that was so individual. You know, I mean, it would be a shame for me to try to do that. I mean, to me, you know, but to hear it and appreciate it, oh man, it's a blessing.
And to reflect it and pass it on in your own way.
Exactly.
I feel like that's why we're here. I couldn't.
That's what we're doing.
No, it really is. And it okay, so it brings us as a natural segue to this new album that you made, the Zulu's Ball. And maybe I'll just play a little bit of the title track, give people an idea what it sounds like.
Okay, cool.
Is that all right with you?
That's cool.
Ted Daniel, Zulu's Ball. It's a great record, and it's.
Thank you.
I mean, we were just talking about creativity and having influences, and yet letting them guide you to yourself.
Right.
Would you say you have that feeling about this? I know you've been working on the King Oliver type projects for a long time.
Yeah. Well, I've been working on King Oliver for a while. You know, we had talked earlier about, your own influence, your own self coming out, and I told you about the first guys I've heard, like Clifford and Lee and Booker, but I had never really went all the way back. I never really listened to that music, the first jazz, So I happened to pick up this record, a King Oliver record, when I was on tour in England, and I decided, and when I listened to it, I said, "Whoa, that's kind of interesting." So I just kept listening, and the more I listened, the more I learned, the more it came out. You know what I mean? And those old recordings are hard to listen to because the fidelity is so bad. So you have to listen carefully, and then you begin to hear what was happening, what they were doing. And so I just got fascinated with the music, I just got fascinated with how they put that music together, and with King Oliver and his sound, and so I began to listen to him and hear the sound that he had, that sort of a bittersweet cry in his playing, that he played, how rhythmically he played, and how simply he played, and that just kind of resonated with me, and I just wanted to go back and deal with that in my playing, to get, to see if I could bring that out of myself, and so, and the other piece is we don't create any art in a vacuum. We live in a society, and so I began to think about the society in which he was creating this beautiful music, and how those guys had to be pretty strong in order to create such a beautiful music under such strident circumstances, put it that way.
To say the least.
And so I began to read about him and his life, and that fascinated me, and how he passed, at the end of his life, how it ended for him, and all of that informs my playing of this music, Zulu's Ball. All of that is in there. Yeah.
And your arrangements, and also your choice of band members. I mean, it's a pretty unique.
Well, actually, that band was put together before I went in, before I got involved with King Oliver. We've been together since 2004, when I started playing the trumpet festival gigs.
Yeah.
So that was in 2004 when I first put Newman and Charles and Joe Daly together, and that was the nucleus, the four of us, and we played. And for the date, I added Marvin Sewell.
Yeah, sounds great.
Yeah, but so that instrumentation also happens to kind of fit that time period. Because King Oliver had worked with a violinist prior to his sessions at Gannett.
What's the earliest King Oliver recording? It was like 1917, 18, maybe a little bit later.
No,
right?
1923.
23 is the first.
Yeah,
and
he didn't record.
Louis Armstrong is on those, right?
Yes,
those
and that's Louis Armstrong's first recordings. Yeah. No, King Oliver didn't want to record because he didn't want people to copy.
Everyone would steal it.
It was already stolen by the time he got on record. But anyway, no, he didn't record earlier on. He could have, but he didn't. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
He thought everybody would steal it, but then I think by 23 the radio was becoming so popular.
They already had it. He was
like, wait a minute, everyone's just going streaming past me on this highway.
Yeah, it was amazing. I mean, that sort of thing, it was interesting about his life and how he thought and so forth, You know,
Yeah.
because I read his story and so.
And was it always cornet for him?
Yeah, he played cornet pretty much all the way through. Yeah.
Yeah. And he was a composer too. He wrote the piece we just heard.
Yeah. He wrote music, and you know that at the end of his life, he began with the big band thing with a sax section. He started that. Yeah.
Wow.
Right. That was the late 20s, early 30s. Yeah.
I want to play a little excerpt. I guess it's Louis Armstrong and Lil Hardin piece called Tears.
Okay.
It's
that's
a more familiar piece, but what you did with it is, I think, fantastic. And
Okay.
special. Tears from the Ted Daniel album, Zulu's Ball. And I should say it's Newman Taylor Baker and Charlie Burnham, Joe Daly, and Marvin Sewell in the band. And we were listening to that, and Ted, you leaned over and said, what did you say? Simple.
Yeah, simple, yeah.
But what you've done, I mean, it's still simple.
Yes.
And it's beautiful, and it comes across as social music.
Yes.
Which is what it was.
Exactly.
But it's also, I don't want to say you're turning it into art music, but the texture of the muted trumpet and the violin and Joe's tuba, it's just changes it.
On that, Joe dubs in the euphonium. That's the
he plays
lead.
the melody part on the euphonium.
Yes, and that melody that he's playing is actually the trombone line that Dutre Andre played on the record. If you hear, I mean the original record, you know, and I just kind of embellished that and let that come through to the fore, and then Charles and I played a little backup line behind him. That's how that, But that was really the trombone player that was playing that, you know, when you hear him out there, and I just kind of like that song, and the whole album I treated each song a little differently. I just let the song itself tell me how to treat it, you know. Like some things are a little more bluesy or a little like on the first Riverside, I think I hit maybe more of a rhythm and blues groove. You know, it's sort of in that groove, a little funky, but
Riverside Blues.
yeah, Riverside blues. Yeah. So I let the tunes dictate to me how they would sound, but I didn't want to. I definitely did not want to go and deconstruct. I didn't want to deconstruct. I wanted to continue to feel the rhythms, you know, and let us play them the way we play them, the way we play them now, you know. But I didn't want to deconstruct the melodies or deconstruct the tune. I wanted to play them pretty formal.
But I think by playing them the way that you play them now, I mean, yeah, it's not a deconstruction. You're right. But in a way, it's a transformation.
Yes, it is.
Shall we say?
Yes, I think it is, and I think that it was a natural one. You know what I mean? And that's what I was shooting for, rather than more overt. Let me just change this all around. You know, hold it. Wait a minute. That's not why I was attracted to the music. You know, I wanted to be honest that way.
You use the word honest. I also think it's honest because you're not attempting to, you know, play a transcription of this thing note for note the way that it was played at that time.
Right.
You're playing it in 2018 or whatever it is, and you know, that's that makes it something new and different. And I think that draws attention to King Oliver and his work,
right,
in a way that says, wait, this guy is still really important.
Right. You started this. You started this whole fiasco.
I guess in a way, right? He did.
One of the guys that started, one of them, yeah.
Well, one of the things you said a moment ago about it's hard to listen to the recordings because the quality isn't always great, and the transfers and the recordings have been moved from format to format over the years, and you get it on a CD, and it's not necessarily easy to listen to. It might sound thin or tinny or whatever.
Exactly, yeah.
And I wondered if you'd ever had the chance to hear any of the recordings, like from the Victrola, or you know, from the way that it was meant to be heard when it was originally released.
Never had a chance to do that. Not yet, anyway. You know.
I did once.
Did you?
And I had the experience. It was with Bix. I was never really, like you, it took me a while to go back to the origins. I just, you know, I listened to Bix, and I had the CDs and did some studying, but it didn't, you know, that personal thing where you hear something and you just go, oh my God, you know, this is shaking me to my core. Randy Sankey, the trumpet player, has Victrolas and all the original records, and he invited me over and he played me some Bix on the Victrola, and it sounded like I was in the room with him. I mean, it was
that good,
the way a recording is supposed to sound.
Yeah,
and I realized, so when they made those early recordings where there was probably one microphone and they were standing in a room and the drummer had to be farther away because it was louder.
Too loud, yeah.
And yet the output sounded really naturalistic to them on that gear from that time.
Yeah. And you heard it, huh? You heard it on the Victrola.
I heard it on the Victrola, and it really changed the way that I perceived that music. Yeah.
Yeah, I bet it did, because you could hear it.
And then when I went back to listen to early Ellington, I never got a chance to do that, but I had, you know, I could imagine what it was supposed to sound like. And it changed things a lot.
Yeah. No, I never had that experience, but maybe at some point I'll get that, you know, to hear it like that.
So you've been playing a lot of different horns over the years, and hunting horns and various cornets and trumpets and whatnot. And I just heard this record that I hadn't heard, that's an Andrew Cyrille record that you play on, called Special People.
Right.
That I guess maybe early 1980s, and I want to just play an excerpt.
79 probably.
79?
79, yeah.
This is called High Priest.
No, that band, Mayono, was together maybe about 5 years, late mid '70s up until maybe '79. Yeah, '79, and one, that particular cut from Special People, the High Priest, we must have did that around '78, '79.
You're playing trumpet on that.
Yeah.
That's not cornet.
That's trumpet. I haven't played trumpet. I mean cornet until I got to King Oliver.
Is that right?
I mean, I had a cornet in high school. I haven't played it since then, And then when I got into King Oliver, I wanted to play the cornet, and I got a cornet from a friend, and so I played cornet for the King Oliver stuff. Yeah.
But I've heard you play these natural horns too.
Yes, I played a French hunting horn, which is no vowels, just a hunting horn.
Yeah.
And it has a very mellow sound, so something like the cornet, And
it's just the overtones.
yeah, it's just overtone series that you can, and if you lip it, you can actually get a scale out of it. You lip it a certain way. Then I played this long horn I call a Moroccan bugle. Is something that my friend Dave Burrell brought back in '69 from Morocco and dropped it on me. And it's a horn that they play in Hocket. They're different sizes, and they play. And I have probably the longest one. And it's a very deep, dark sound that I get with it, and, and mysterious. I open it.
I don't think I've ever heard you play that one. The Moroccan. You would.
The Moroccan bugle, I call it, yeah. Or kakai, I call it.
Wow.
I opened Billy Bang's Vietnam: The Aftermath with it, with that horn on one of the tunes, yeah. So you'll hear it good there, and some of my recordings it's on, yeah.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
And you played on some of those Henry Threadgill records.
Yeah,
I guess it's the French hunting horn.
That's what that is. Yeah, on Out of My Trees or something.
Song Out of My Trees.
Yeah. That on that album, I think. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's all a part of trying to find my own way. Different sounds and that I can produce and still be cohesive.
And is the Zulu's Ball project, this King Oliver music, is this an ongoing project? Are you doing more pieces, or is there something else coming down the pike that we should be?
Well, right now I'm still busy with that in terms of just trying to play it and get it out there. We never really took it on the road, so to speak, but I want to play it a little more. There's still some more development there I want to get to, so I'm going to be doing that for the rest of this year. And, there are other things that I want to do in terms of, I want to write more. I'm going to, be a little more disciplined in that. I have been listening to some of my older stuff. I had a big band back in the '70s, Energy, and it had several iterations. And the last iteration was a band that I took into Rashid Ali's club, Ali's Alley. And I have a couple of nights of a weekend that I recorded down there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, with John Besh and Joe Bowie and Joe Rigby and just a whole bunch of guys that worked with me around that time. About 18 pieces.
Wow.
And this particular iteration has 2 drummers, and some of the material was pretty good. And I listened. I said, I want to get back to writing again.
Wow.
So I'm gonna. That's one of the things that I'm gonna really pursue, is to do a little more writing.
Big band writing.
Yeah, large group. Yeah.
Will that recording that you made at Ali's Alley ever see the light of day? Is that?
Well, that's on the cooker. It's a project.
You're thinking about it.
I'm definitely thinking about it.
Probably a lot of people to contact, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Remember this thing we did? Well, no, but
because that's let's see, that was 78.
Yeah.
That was 78. So that's 40 years?
40 years ago.
Yeah, 40 years. Yeah. So anyway, but that's something that I want to get out within the next year or so. Just it's very good. It's very interesting and history.
I guess 78, I mean, I hate to put things in eras, but, the loft vibe was alive at that. Would you say that was like the high water mark for all of these independent spaces?
I wouldn't say the high water. I would say I think it was on the down already. Yeah, because by 80
things were closing.
Yeah, it was hard for me to get work. I know that, and I used to work all the lofts.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was yeah. By 80, it was pretty much. It was pretty quiet. It wasn't the same. It wasn't the same as 75.
Yeah.
No.
So 74, when you made Tapestry in that period,
Yeah.
all those lofts were going.
Oh yeah. We're broke. Jolie's, Ladies Fort, Sam Rivers.
Warren Smith,
Studio We.
Ornette's place.
Ornette. There was many places to play. Yeah.
Wow, interesting. So I moved to the city in '84, and there was none of that.
Right. See, but yeah.
I mean, I didn't realize that it was so recent.
Yeah.
Until later.
Yeah. It was the 70s.
It was already just clubs,
Yeah.
and now there's less clubs than there were then.
Yeah.
But scenes change, right?
Quickly.
Yeah.
Quickly. Yeah. But it was a good period for me because I was working with my big band, my small groups. Mm-hmm. I was working with Dewey Redman. I was working with Andrew Surreal. So I had work in this. I was busy. Mm-hmm.
Wow. Well, with Dewey, that must have been challenging from a technical perspective.
Yeah, it was, but it was. I was telling somebody the other day. When I hate to digress, but when I first came to New York and Dave Burrell and Bayard Lancaster and Bobby Cap had this loft on Bond Street, not far from where eventually Sam Rivers had opened his place. Anyway, they had open house at their place all the time. That was Dave and them. And they knew like Elvin and Gratian and all them cats would come by. And I got a chance to play with Elvin, just jam session. And I was telling this guy how, we was playing and I was feeling like I was getting it, I was playing and I took, I said, I'm playing with Elvin. This is happening. I thought I was happening. And I took a little peek and looked at Elvin and he was like, looking out the window or something like, when's something going to happen? But I was feeling so much information. The point I'm trying to make here is that you grow, you learn how to build and so forth. So when I got back, in '69 and into the '70s and was playing, I was more mature and knew how to build a solo. And working with Eddie Moore with Dewey Redman's band was a pleasure and a learning experience that I was ready for. And so it was challenging because Dewey's music could be challenging. And just playing with those guys. He could
be a real muscular player too. So you had to stand next to him and
And so, but that was a great experience for me, playing with Dewey's band, because most of the time it was just a quartet, just he and I, Cyrone and Eddie Moore. Mm-hmm. And when he would record, he would add somebody, maybe a cellist or violinist.
Wow.
But most of the time it was just the quartet, and it was very intense, good learning experience for me.
Yeah. Wow. So I can probably wrap this up, but I see you brought me you came bearing gifts.
Yes.
This record I've been looking for.
Yes.
So
I don't know.
I don't know it. I haven't heard it.
Know,
but is there a particular track that you'd want me to play? From this, it's called "In the Beginning."
Yes.
It's your record from must be
74.
Same period, right?
Yeah, 74.
Yeah. Wow. Featuring Charles Tyler, Arthur Blythe, Oliver Lake, David Murray.
Yeah.
And many others.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. You could play the first one, was my tune,
All right.
Greetings, I think it is. Mm-hmm.
It's called Greeting, yeah. And we'll go out with that. And beautiful pictures of you playing the trumpet in New York?
Yes, New York,
must be the Flatiron Building, right?
Exactly.
23rd Street.
Yeah. So that picture was taken a little later than the music.
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for making the time. Oh, and I have this one.
Oh,
This is
okay.
great.
I didn't know.
I don't have a hard copy.
Okay.
This is the Ted Daniel solo album
Yeah.
that you made in Pisa,
Yeah.
in Italy.
Yeah. I didn't know you had
Beautiful.
that.
Well, I've heard it, but now I have a physical copy.
Okay.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Ted, it's great talking to you.
All right,
Thanks
man.
for the music and the inspiration.
Thank you. Thank you for having me,
And
man.
I didn't know that Ossining was the home to so many of our creative heroes.
Oh, yeah, a couple of us.
I thought it was just a prison.
No. It's not just the prison.
And the farmer's market.
Yeah.
Wow, that's great. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you, man. Take care.
Take care.
Coda.
Okay, brute force. When I got out of the Army in '68, I went out to Central State and studied with Ken McIntyre at Central State and formed this band with my brother, Brute Force. So during that time, our friend Sonny was working with Herbie Mann. When they came out to Central State to do a concert, Brute Force opened for them. So then Herbie was really interested in the band. He thought the band had something special going on. So what happened was he put us on a contract. He gave the band a contract to record. And at the time, the band didn't have a guitar player. It was that seat kept switching up. So by the time there was time to record, Sonny was able to do it for us, with us. So Sonny Chirac recorded with Brute Force. This would have been around September of '69 here in New York City. And Herbie Mann produced it. And so then when the record came out, we opened for Herbie Mann at the Village Gate. This must have been '70. This must have been the spring of '70, somewhere in there like that, or summer of '70. And we opened for Herbie Mann, Brute Force did, and lo and behold, who's sitting in the front seat, in the front row, but Mr. Herbie Hancock. So at that time, we had 4 horns. We had tenor, trombone, and 2 trumpets on the front line, and electric guitar, electric piano, 2 basses. Brute Force used 2 basses, 2 electric basses, and a drummer and conga player. It was a big band, big group. But, we focused on things like original tunes, and we also stretched out into some Pharoah Saunders type things, some of the Creator Has a Master Plan and stuff like that. Because we played for a lot of dances and stuff out there in Ohio when we was doing it, So the band was very interesting. It had a sort of a psychedelic feeling to it, but it was really funky and jazzy. Yeah. Right.